Hi, my name is Doug Wadensall, and today I'm going to be giving a presentation to teachers about equitable strategies in math education. On the agenda for today, we are going to have an introduction where we talk about equity and what it looks like in the classroom. We'll go into some misconceptions, so what's wrong with current paradigms in math education, and we will look at some equitable strategies so that make math education accessible to all students. When you hear the word equity, what kind of classroom do you picture? The buzz of students working together to solve complex problems? Classrooms full of smiling students excited to answer a teacher's questions? Students focused on independent work, moving around the room to complete activities? Equity in the classroom means that all students, regardless of race, gender, or socioeconomic status, are given their best opportunity to succeed and to enjoy their learning. In an equitable classroom, all children have an equal opportunity to succeed. In developing a classroom rooted in equity, it is important to challenge misconceptions of what it means to learn math and to adopt equitable strategies which dismantle the barriers faced by students. So the two big misconceptions we're looking at today are fixed math ability, which is the idea that there is a math gene which determines math ability, and tracking. And tracking is where students are grouped into math classes based on the ability, and then the math classes that they can take in the future are also based on those groups that they are put in. So fixed math ability. Many educators believe that math ability is largely based upon one's genetics. To be great at math, you must be born with the math gene. Students who are deemed to have this gene are labeled as gifted and placed into advanced math classes. The labeling of students as gifted hurts not only the students who are deemed as having no gifts, but also the students who are given the gifted label, as it sets them on a fixed mindset pathway, making them vulnerable and less likely to take risks. So students who are deemed as not gifted simply do not have the opportunity to take courses that will help them. They also have a representation of themselves of not being as good at math, and this can be really damaging to a child's psyche. Whereas students who are labeled as gifted also encounter struggles down the road and later in math courses because they believe they are good at math. So when that idea is challenged and when they run into difficulty in a math class, they may stop taking those courses. So it causes this perception that you're good or bad, and when that idea is broken, it's very hard for a child to overcome it. Belief in fixed math ability are especially damaging to women. These beliefs not only damage female performance in mathematical testing, but also lead to underrepresentation of women within the STEM fields. In this graph, on the y-axis, we're seeing perceived mathematics ability in 10th grade, and then percentile score of standardized mathematics tests along the x-axis, and you can see how much lower women's perceived math ability is than men on the list. And so even when their performance rises, they are still not scoring as well because there's this perception built in, this fixed idea that they aren't as good at math. And this goes on to college courses. So women are much less likely to take technology, engineering, or mathematics courses than males. So they're underrepresented in the STEM fields because there's a fixed idea that they are not as good at math. So if we want to see the field shift and we want to see more women in STEM fields and more minorities in STEM fields, then this perception of a fixed math mindset has got to go. And so fixed math ability can show that 73% of math doctorates were male and 94% were white or Asian. The proportion of women taking mathematics PhDs between 2004 and 2013 actually fell from 34% of students to 27%. Fixed math ability beliefs perpetuate structures which promote inequalities between students. Within the fixed ability paradigm, math is placed on an intellectual pedestal. Putting math on an intellectual pedestal causes people to view math as a skill that is less learned and more inherently encoded. Those who are quick at calculating math problems are deemed intelligent, undermining the value of hard work during problem solving. Moving on to tracking. Tracking is the practice of grouping students together based on ability. This poses major risks to making sure all students have access to an equitable education. Tracking is not an accurate way to group students and shows no benefits to student performance. Lowest track classes are typically characterized by an exclusive focus on basic skills, low expectations, and the least qualified teachers. And a big practice in moving away from tracking is detracking, which students are no longer based in groups on ability and instead are grouped heterogeneously, which means that they are in groups of all different math skill levels. So this kind of placement gives students opportunities to take math courses that they'd like to take, rather than being put in a group as low as kindergarten or first grade and then taking courses based on that grouping for the rest of their life along that tier. So let's look at some strategies to break these misconceptions, strategies to create equitable classrooms. And especially in opportunities to learn, we're going to look at ways that detracking can occur so that students have access to success. So we're looking at opportunities to learn, success for all, which is the ability to bring all students, no matter race, gender, or socioeconomic status, to opportunities that lead them to success. The importance of critical thinking within the math room and posing challenging problems, and collaboration, working with groups of peers, and then the importance of reflection for both students and teachers. So our first strategy, opportunities to learn, is to engage students. It is important to challenge them with rich, open-ended problems. These kinds of problems task students to engage in higher level thinking by asking deep questions, rephrasing problems, using logic, working with manipulatives, connecting ideas, and explaining. Giving rich tasks that the teachers described as group-worthy problems, problems that were difficult to solve alone and that required different members of a group to contribute, challenges students of all levels to view math not as a subject focused on rote memorization, but rather as a subject that is deeply experiential. So when we're looking at this model, if students are offered access to high-level content and given the opportunities to learn that are often not present under tracking model, they are much more likely to develop positive math mindsets. So there were these studies, beginning teacher evaluations, that were done in 2002 that showed substantial differences in the time teachers allocated and found statistically significant associations between time allocated and student achievement. These are samples of the early empirical evidence that if students spend more time working on a topic, they will learn more about the topic. So this is really challenging traditional beliefs that you have ability and therefore you're grouped with that. You're placed in a group where you have access to these skills. And what we're finding, what scientific trends show, is that the key difference in learning is what you're placed into, the opportunities you have. So if you have access to high level math concepts, you are much more likely to learn those over time. So it isn't because students have higher ability they learn concepts. It's because they're exposed to those higher math concepts. So if students have time with that, all students have better access. The following figure from Access and Opportunities to Learn are not accidents. Engineering mathematical progress in your school, present strategies to create access to challenging content. So there's a big difference between high performing schools and low performing schools. What we see is that teachers are discussing abstract ideas a lot more than lecturing towards a class. So this focus from rote memorization turns to problem solving and to working together in class discussions. Classes exhibit the characteristics of learning communities. So again, learning is much more collaborative. Instead of students working on a worksheet by themselves, they are working together to solve problems. Meaning is pushed beyond the task. So teachers don't lead tasks as much as they have tasks for students to explore. So teachers have high expectations for everyone to learn. This means that not some students succeeding, rather all have the opportunity to succeed. So teachers aren't focused on just delivering content to those who want to learn, but rather they're trying to create an atmosphere where all students want to learn and all students have access to the ability to learn. Teachers build continuity in mathematical domains from day to day, and what this shows is the interconnectedness between math and other subjects. So each math skill isn't an isolated skill. You learn algebra along with geometry, is that you're not just learning this rote task, you're learning how math skills build on each other and how they build on solving real world problems. And students are comfortable with classroom routines. So you have to have classroom routines built in that students know the expectations and they know how everything's connected. Success for all. When you are building a classroom based on equity, it's really important to work towards engaging those groups that are traditionally underrepresented because concerning trends of gender and race representation and perceived aptitude in mathematics are a big deal. So ideas need to be shifted through the use of positive math messages within the classroom. Steele et al. Did a fascinating study in 1999 which looked at stereotypes of women in mathematics. And what they determined in their study was that characterizing tests insensitive to gender differences was enough to totally eliminate women's underperformance in this experiment. Yet, when the same test was characterized as sensitive to gender differences, women significantly underperformed in relation to equally qualified men. In the data here, we see that when there was no characterized gender difference, when women were held on the same level and not sent a message that math ability was fixed, the performance was very close to the same on the math test. However, when women had to fill out a bubble saying, I'm female versus male, or they were told that there is a gender difference in ability, their performance dropped significantly. That second graph is very concerning how different it is. Compared to when this mixed message isn't sent, students perform at a great level. It's really important that we start bucking those trends and we start making students feel like they are capable, no matter their race, no matter their gender, no matter their socioeconomic status. A key to shifting mindsets about who can succeed in the mathematics classroom is highlighting examples of success outside of those deemed stereotypically good at math. Promoting equity in the classroom means sending historically underrepresented student populations messages that they have the ability to succeed in mathematics. Framing math as a subject that all students have the ability to succeed in leads to a classroom that encourages all students to perform at their highest ability. One great way to do this is to start injecting diversity into your math curriculum through bringing in stories, books, articles on underrepresented populations, and showing them that they can succeed. All the books listed here, Women in Mathematics, Complexities, African Americans in Science, Math, and Invention, show that it isn't based on your gender, it isn't based on your race, whether or not you'll succeed. That hard work is what leads to success. That believing you have the ability leads to success. So when you inject your curriculum with different kinds of material that shows that, it empowers students who traditionally might not feel empowered, might not feel like they're the greatest at math. So you're changing the whole message behind who is good at math. It isn't you're good at math because of something inside of you. You're good at math because you work at it. Everyone has the ability to learn math skills. And critical thinking is another key to engaging students in the math process. So we have to teach math as a connected, inquiry-based subject, which drives students, especially those that are underrepresented, towards a depth of understanding which gives them agency in the learning process. Teachers are most important resources for students. They are the ones who can create exciting mathematics environments, give students the positive messages they need, and take any math test and make it one that piques students' curiosity and interests. Teachers can promote critical thinking through the design of rich mathematical tasks. Illustrated below are some examples of rich mathematical tasks which promote critical thinking. I pulled these resources mainly from Bowler's website, UCubed, and Enrich Mathematics. They offer some great tasks which teach students to think outside of the box, which teach them to look at math problems conceptually and tackle them from lots of different angles. Rich mathematical tasks engage pupils actively in learning mathematics and developing the skills needed to use and apply mathematics. So there are tasks like 7 flipped, where you're looking at geometric shapes and you're getting a visual representation, or where you're using manipulatives to help you work with math. So the key to critical thinking is having problems where they are open-ended and where students can work together, which leads us perfectly into collaboration. Equity within the classroom goes beyond asking students to work on rich mathematical tasks. For students to gain real-world skills, they must also be able to work collaboratively in solving math problems. When students work on mathematics collaboratively, which also gives them opportunities to see and understand mathematics connections, equitable outcomes results. When groups are working in peers together to solve problems, they are starting to see that everyone encounters similar challenges with math, and their curiosity and their drive for exploration is skyrocketed. It shoots up when you're working together and you're engaging in math problems, and you are seeing how each brain works uniquely to solve problems, and there's many ways to do it. They're also gaining skills to work in the real world as they learn teamwork and cooperation. When compared to more traditional methods, where students passively receive information from a teacher, cooperative problem-based learning has been shown to improve student engagement and retention of classroom material. Collaborative learning is built on engaging and meaningful math work. Group interaction that occurs while solving complex problems leads to communities constructed on mathematics. This merging between academic and social, along with an understanding of how math connects to other subjects, empowers students to work together to challenge difficult math tasks. Finally, we move into reflection. At the core of a classroom built on equity is reflection. Reflection on one's own teaching methods and reflection as a tool for students to process their own learning. Reflection is a really important piece for teachers and students to look at their own learning and to gain meaning out of learning, and for teachers to inject meaning into learning. So for students, reflections especially can be a tool to replace homework. PISA, the International Assessment Group, with a dataset of 13 million students, recently made a major announcement. After studying the relationships among homework achievement and equity, they announced that homework perpetuates inequalities in education. The problem with homework, one of the many problems with homework, is that it creates divide and inequalities because not all people have access, not all students have access to the same models at home to work on homework. Not only this, but when homework is set home, the whole idea of homework, it takes away from valuable family time. Instead of homework, there can be much more powerful ways to engage students. As technology becomes a larger and larger part of education inequalities have only risen as access remains a major issue. This has been especially exacerbated during modern times when a lot of homework has moved onto the internet, or especially as we move towards more online models as a global pandemic occurs. So we are seeing that access is not equal. This is a study that actually just occurred where we can see that many of those in lower socioeconomic statuses do not have the same access to computers or to Wi-Fi to be able to do homework. Or those who are in minority populations do not have access to a computer to do their homework or Wi-Fi to do their homework. So as the homework gap grows, we are seeing that homework does not serve a great purpose within education, and there are better ways for students to gain meaning out of their tasks, such as reflections. So reflections then serve as a tool which create equity by focusing time outside of the classroom on reviewing knowledge. Reflections in and out of the classroom engage students in making meaning out of the process of learning. And there are some great tools for reflection, including discussions, questioning, and journals. Discussions invite students to share their metacognition, reveal their intentions, detail their strategies for solving a problem, describe their mental maps for monitoring their problem-solving process, and reflect on the strategy to determine its adequacy. So engaging in discussions in class gives students a time to decompress and to work over everything that's going on while they're solving complex math tasks. So you're taking time for students to see the strategies they use and to see how they're learning. Questioning, similar to discussions, supports students to reveal their insights, understandings, and applications of their learning and habits of mind. So this is especially where a teacher can use prompting and can delve into why did you make this decision instead of students rotely mechanically going through a task. So they're starting to notice the underlying process. Questioning can also occur in a collaborative sense between peers and between groups. And journals. Journals are ways for students to process their learning more long term. So this is something they can look back on, so they can see how they've learned, and then they can use these learnings and apply these learnings by having them written in stone, and so they can consciously modify their behavior. Teachers also need to reflect. And equity-based teaching requires a substantial amount of reflection, which involves not just reflecting on your pedagogy and your classroom norms, but also considering how you identify yourself and how others identify you. In order to build classrooms that are equitable, teachers need to reflect on their own practices. This involves looking at how they intentionally produce environments that are culturally relevant and encourage positive math mindsets. For students to succeed, teachers need to be constantly working to build a classroom that gives them all access to equity. The role of the teacher is to create an environment where all students have their best opportunity to succeed. In order to do this, teachers must be aware of the misconceptions which guide current math practices. Many traditional math practices do not support all learners. As agents of change, teachers should adopt strategies which build towards equitable education. Students deserve to be empowered. This can only happen in math education if all students are told and shown they can succeed. Through tackling complex challenges collaboratively, being given access to rich and diverse opportunities, and through reflecting on their learning.